I found a video series called Driving Through History that I found years ago and forgot about it, but I discovered it this morning when I was looking for something to kind of give you some background on Smyrna, some visual background. So he's got it for each of the 7 churches, and I'm going to show you the one for Smyrna too, but I thought we'd back up a little bit, if only by way of review, and show you the one on Ephesus too. They're about 4 minutes long. So I'm recording this now for the folks that will watch this later on the internet, on our website where I put these Bible studies. But this part will get deleted out. However, I'm putting down below in the video and on the YouTube page and also on the church website the links to these videos so that you can watch them on your own. So we're going to watch, I'm pretty sure it's called Driving Through History, and we're going to watch back-to-back, one on Ephesus and then one on Smyrna, and that will be the start of our study of Christ's letter to the church in Smyrna. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're now back in Turkey, where we'll begin our whirlwind journey through the 7 churches of Revelation.
Well, let's read through the letter for ourselves. It's on your first page there, or you can follow along in your Bible if you want to. It's Revelation 2, 8 through 11. By the way, the picture there beneath the reading, you might recognize from the video that you just watched. He stepped off of that. That's the colonnade along the agora. Do you know what an agora is?
Marketplace.
Yeah, it includes a marketplace. It's a little bit more than that. An agora would be a public meeting place as well as a place of commerce, like we would think of it as a farmer's market on steroids. I mean, they would have, and the agoras still exist today. I saw another video this morning where the person was walking through the modern day agora, serving as a marketplace, and there were cloth merchants, textile merchants, and jewelry and pottery and all the things that you would want to go to Southport during their annual festival that they have there to see. They have there on a regular, if not daily basis. In my hometown, there was a marketplace right down on the town square. There still is today, and you can go there into the city building. It's all opened up, and people have their fresh meats and fish and eggs and tomato plants and, you know, all kinds of stuff every Saturday morning there in the marketplace in the old city hall in Springfield, Ohio, that's right there around the Esplanade and everything else. So these things carry over into modern times as well, but they were thriving places in those times. So I think you caught in the one that you came in at the end of, Pam, about the video about Ephesus, that is where Timothy was martyred. So the Timothy of 1st and 2nd Timothy fame, Paul's dear son in the faith, or dear child in the faith. And do you remember why it said that he died?
He was preaching. He was preaching, and the people that were worshiping whatever God.
Yeah. So they were having the festival of the goddess Artemis, Diana, depending upon whether you're thinking Roman or Greek, and the local economy, as we learned last week, thrived around the cult that the city was established around. So the cult of Artemis, not to mention, well, I guess I am mentioning it, the emperor cult that was there too. And do you remember the particular emperor whom the Ephesians built a temple to in Ephesus? Hadrian, the Emperor Hadrian. So that was in Ephesus. Well, when you stand up against such things, when you simply preach the gospel, in such a festival, they welcome you with open arms because they're so tolerant. They love to have other opinions and other faiths present at their. Oh, heck no, they don't. And let me tell you, again, that we are getting dangerously close in the United States of America to that time and that practice and that kind of thing happening to Christian people who are faithful to the point of preaching the gospel in whatever form. It doesn't have to be just standing up and proclaiming over the top of everybody else. It could be simply walking among the crowd, handing out Christian literature or New Testaments or anything like that. You will not be tolerated. Let me just tell you that. If everybody that preaches tolerance in our society today, you just try to take Christ into their arena, which is a public arena. They use public spaces. Like, what's the new place downtown that they've just built behind the...
Park?
Huh?
Park.
What's it called?
Bell Tower.
Bell Tower Park. A place like that. I don't know if that's used for it, but I wouldn't be surprised. But a public place like that is very... the kind of place that they want to use. You just go down there and take a satchel filled with New Testaments or Christian literature and hand it out and talk to people and about Christ. You'll be escorted to the sidelines, even though it's a public place. I can almost guarantee you, if you are seen doing it by somebody with any kind of authority at all for that, somebody that's running it, you will be asked to leave, and if you don't, made to leave, and eventually, in this country, it will get worse. Yes?
Have you read that book, A Dreaded Agenda?
No.
I think it's called A Dreaded Agenda, where Christianity is being slowly pushed out.
Oh yeah, well, that's manifest. That's so obvious what's going on in the country. And in Western society, period, not just in the United States, but in Canada, in Europe. It's been going on for quite a while. So, Timothy was martyred probably right where he was stepping off the colonnade, probably right down the agora is where he was dragged and beaten on public display. Why would that be done? Well, you've seen what happens when people want to get their political agenda across or their religious agenda across or their social agenda across. They will whip people into a fervor to the point that the people who are so fervent and outraged don't even know what it's about at all. Just watch the news. Watch the news coverage of the riots in the Twin Cities in Minnesota from a few years back, and you'll quickly realize that those people are just in it for the sport, for the venting of their stupidity. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know why anything is being done. And even the people that do don't have all the facts about them. It's terrible. Well, we're headed that way. So enjoy it while you got it, folks. Let's read. And to the angel of the church in Smyrna write the words of the first and the last who died and came to life. I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich. And the slander of those who say that they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Was I just saying something like that? Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested. And for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. Well, I want to remind you that we have 7 parts typically in these letters. So I put that at the top of this one again. That was at the beginning of the Ephesian letter last time. But I just want to go over these again. Number 1, there's an address to the specific church. So in this letter, the address is to what church? The one in Smyrna. The second thing is the introduction of the writer by way of titles or ascriptions. So what are those in this letter? The first and the last, but that's not all. Who died and came to life. Right. Number 3, what the church is doing right. So he's listed out those things as well. And then rebuke. But do you notice something interesting about the letter to the church in Smyrna at this point? Where's the rebuke? There is no rebuke to the church in Smyrna. I find that arresting. Could this church be rebuked for anything? Well, you're not listening to the sermons if you don't think that the church could be rebuked for a few things. I regularly rebuke the church, particularly those who aren't present, who say that they're part of the church, and specifically this church. I regularly rebuke people for not being in worship. I even rebuke people who are watching online. I will look right at the guys running the live stream up there and go, stop it. Get out of your house, come to St. Paul's and worship with your church people. I've even gone so far as to say that I'm not sure that having the live stream is even a good thing to have. We went to a lot of trouble and some expense, considerable expense, to hook all that stuff up during COVID. But you know what? The last time I checked, none of you are wearing masks anymore. It might be better for us to record the service and then edit it down to the sermon, maybe the anthem, the reading of Scripture. I don't know. But not having it up that day. Not having it live streamed. Just videoing it, editing it down, and putting it on the website by Wednesday. I am so over making people feel like they went to church because they turned on their computer. Rebuke is number 4, but no rebuke in the letter to Smyrna. We'll see if it happens again in the other 5 church letters. Number 5, a call to repentance. Number 6, a promise, usually beginning to he who overcomes I will, and there's the promise. Or to he who conquers I will give, and then there's the promise. And then finally, you got an ear? Just one. All I need is one. You got an ear? Well, listen up. So hear the Spirit is the 7th thing. And sometimes number 6 and 7, the promise and the hearing of the Spirit are reversed. You'll see that happen. So you heard in the video about Smyrna that it is surrounded today. It's just engulfed. The modern city in Turkey of Izmir just spreads all around it in a big circle. Third largest city. Third largest city. That's saying something. What's the third largest city in the United States? Chicago, maybe, yeah. Maybe New York, LA, Chicago. I don't really know for sure. But that gives you an idea of what Izmir is in Turkey. It's the third largest city. Now, its population probably isn't that much more than Columbus, Ohio. The last time I checked, which was decades ago, Columbus was like over 1 million, 1.5 million, something like that. So not greatly more than a town that I can find my way around in pretty easily, Columbus, Ohio. But it's the third largest city in Asia Minor, what we call Turkey today. And what did Dave call it in his video? The Asia Province. I had never heard it called that before. By way of the old circular postal route, Smyrna is about 50 miles northwest of where we studied last week. So I can show you that real quickly here. So you see where Ephesus is there, and out into the Aegean Sea, you see where Patmos is. This map illustrator was decent enough to give us a picture of things that's not quite true to scale. If Patmos were on the map as true to scale there, you really wouldn't be able to see it. It would be just a tiny speck of yellow in that blue. But you see Ephesus there, and then just to the northwest there, and you see by scale what 100 kilometers is. I can't remember how to make that work out in miles, but Smyrna is about 50 miles, slightly west of north from Ephesus. And then Pergamum looks like it might be 60 to 70 miles due north of Smyrna. We'll find out next week. Revelation 2:8, I'm the first and the last. Now, I want to see, just looking around here, it's possible that Helen has already looked that up. She's in the Old Testament, it looks like to me. Do you have that, Helen? Okay.
Listen to me, O Jacob, and Israel, whom I call. I am he, I am the first, and I am the last.
Yeah. So what should you do with the first and the last that you might expect is coming up at the end of our letter to Smyrna and every other letter? What's the call there, Helen? Because he's the first and the last, what should Jacob and Israel do? Listen. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the church. Listen. During the time of John writing the letter to Ephesus, Dave said that the church in Ephesus was well established. Did it look well established to you when you saw the video? There's no church there, just ruins. In old Smyrna, at least, did it look like any church worships there? There used to be a basilica there. Not there anymore. Now, is there a church in Izmir? Maybe. I'd have to look into that to find out. My point is, these churches in Revelation didn't seem to have listened to the first and the last. So that's your warning. This is what happens to the church when they don't listen. There are churches. I used to be a United Methodist pastor back in the 80s. And at that time, as I recall, there were more than 38,000 United Methodist churches in this country. There was a United Methodist church on every street corner in every city in the country. They were popping up at a rate post-World War II of one new church opening every single day. Can you imagine that? In the 80s, that was hard for me to imagine, but they were still opening them up. But shortly thereafter, now it was after I left the United Methodist Church. I don't think that's coincidental, though, but the church started to lose churches. The denomination started to lose churches. And they started to lose pastors. Does this sound familiar? It should. Because it's not just happening to United Methodists. My district, called the Springfield District, had 92 churches in it. Now the Springfield District is part of like 4 other districts. They've had to combine 5 districts to make one district of a size enough of churches that it made sense to have an overseer or a district superintendent getting pastors for those churches and helping them sort out their problems and that sort of thing. But even now, if I remember right, my district, which was 1/5 the geographical size, had 92 churches. Now the district that is 5 times the size geographically is only 75 churches. It's just fallen apart. Well, why do you suppose that is? People just don't want to be United Methodist anymore? They've all gone over to the Lutheran Church? No, that is not the reason. The reason is in what Helen read. Hear, O Jacob, and you, O Israel, I am the first and the last. Listen to me. You remember what happened on the Mount of Transfiguration? What did the Lord say to Peter, James, and John? This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. I like to emphasize the him usually. Listen to him as above Elijah and Moses. But listen to him. When the church fails to listen to the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last, that church is in flush cycle. They're in a spiral. Richard Lenski, my favorite New Testament commentator, he pastored a church in Springfield, Ohio, by the way, a long time ago, and I've been trying to figure out which church it is, which Lutheran church. I can't figure it out, but he has written a really, really good commentary. You have to find another one. He's written a really good commentary of the New Testament that is out of print today, but you can still find it on eBay. And if you want to find it electronically, I can show you how to download a free version of Logos Bible software and show you how to use it, and you can get his commentary in that. It is just a rich commentary. This is what he said. It's printed halfway down page 21 in your sheets. This first and the last, he's the one at the beginning and at the end of history. That's what it means to be the first and the last. He's the one at the beginning and the end of history, from whom and for whom all history exists. Now that's quite an enveloping thought, isn't it? That takes it all in. He's not only at the beginning and the end of history, history exists for him. What do you think Lenski meant by that? From whom, we get that. History comes out from God. Nothing happens that isn't according to his will. But for whom all history exists. What do you think Lenski means by that? Yes, that's the from whom, but the for whom.
Everything belongs to him?
Oh yeah, now you're getting close to it. Yeah, everything does belong to him, but why? What's the point of that?
He made it. He made it.
Yes, that's the from whom, but the for whom.
History tells us what we're supposed to do. So, all of history is our instruction for believing in God.
Should be. Should be. The pop musician, famous during the 80s, 90s, and still is today, just not doing pop music today, but Sting, if you've ever heard him, one of his early albums, he wrote a song called History Can Teach Us Nothing. Well, it can teach us, we just refuse to learn. History can teach us a lot. We just rewrite history to suit our own needs, and we make the same mistakes that previous people in history made as a result. History can teach us nothing. Let me tell you what I think this means, at least in part. For whom all history exists. Here's a hopeful and scary word for you. You exist in history to serve God's purposes. Dave, you exist right now and have existed your whole life and will exist for the rest of your earthly life for God's purposes. You exist for Him, not for Dave, and not for Judy. She's just a gift from God whom you serve in this life. Sarah, you exist for God's purposes. You are here so that you can be and do what God wills. Linda, you too exist in this life for God's purposes. Betty, and all the rest of you, you exist for God. You do not exist for you. Everything that's wrong in the world can be traced down to this truth, I think. Everybody who thinks that they exist for themselves, you don't even want to be around them, do you? Those are the people who are destroying America. Those are the people who have already destroyed Europe. You exist for God. And if you don't think that's true, listen up to the rest of this letter to Smyrna. Because he's getting ready to say, I know the trouble and the tribulation and the trials that you're going through. Well, buck up, kiddo, because it's going to get worse. He doesn't say, don't you worry, I got it all sorted out. You won't have to suffer a little bit. That's not what God does. Why? Because you exist for His purposes, not yours. You are blessed indeed if you have had an easy Christian life. Now, I've had an easy Christian life. But let me give you a couple of examples of times when it didn't feel too easy. But I wasn't getting drugged through the streets by worshipers of Artemis like Timothy was. I didn't get nailed to a cross. I haven't yet resisted to the point of the shedding of blood, as the Scripture points out to us. But I can remember a job I had as a so-called designer in a company in my hometown back in, Susan and I were barely married when I had this job. And every day I would go to work, and the designer right behind me would turn on the radio to the local uber-conservative Christian radio station and just make a mockery of everything that they said as a way of mocking me and my faith in Christ. It was so fun to go to work there. I remember at some point I came home, climbed the stairs to our apartment, sat down on the sofa, and stared at the clock. Finally, Susan wanted to know what the heck was going on with me. And I said, I'm trying to figure out how long it is before I have to go back there again. It's terrible. But when it came time for that person to get a new job and to move from one city to another, guess who the only person was to go over to her apartment and help her load up the U-Haul to move her stuff? Guess who the only person was that went to her new place of employment to see her new digs and to congratulate her on a step up in the design world? She wasn't mocking me then. In fact, she seemed pretty quizzical at the whole experience. We have opportunities. We exist for God's purposes. Maybe that was the reason I had to endure that for a year and a half. was just to help her move, which benefited me. And hopefully benefited Joan in an eternal sense, eventually. We exist for God's purposes. You can probably find places in your life where it wasn't easy for a minute, maybe with family because of your faith. Maybe with your neighbor, maybe at work. It's not meant to be easy. Jesus suffered. We should count ourselves blessed. We're going to come across the scripture today that says this very thing. We should count ourselves blessed if we have to suffer for the name as well. That's the first and the last. Listen to him. He's the one at the beginning and at the end of history, from whom and for whom all history exists. In verse 8, it says that he died and came to life. Who found the Romans passage? You got it? Romans 6:9. Read it.
We know that Christ, being raised from the dead, will never die again. Death no longer has dominion over him.
Yeah. He died, but he's come back to life, and he'll be alive forever. He sits alive at his Father's right hand in glory. 14:9.
For to this end Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord both of the dead and of the living.
There you go. Revelation 2:9 says, I know what you're going through, I know. Psalm 1:6, it was just in our lesson a week ago in church.
For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish.
The Lord knows the way of the righteous. He's got his eye on you. Well, that means I won't have to suffer. No, it didn't say that. It just says that he's got his eye on you. He knows the way of the righteous. He knows what you've done well and what you haven't done well. And he sends a rebuke and says, if you got an ear to hear, better listen. Verse 9 says, I know your poverty. I know you're poor. Well, what does that mean? We've already talked about this. What happened to Christians in the old world? Well, how did Christianity even spread from way up there, way up and over there in Israel and Jerusalem, all the way out here to the Asia province, all the way out to this place in modern-day Turkey? That's quite a distance to have traveled. How did Christianity get there? Was it just Paul and Barnabas going on missionary journeys? Well, that's part of it. The other apostles, that's part of it. But I think the bigger part of it is something else. I've talked about it. Do you remember what it was?
All messengers of God.
Well, we are all messengers of God. We should be able to share the gospel. But how did they get out here? How did Christians get all the way out here to share the gospel? They were persecuted, and they couldn't sell anymore, and they couldn't buy anymore. That's why it says, I know you're poor. I know your poverty. They couldn't hold down a trade the way they used to be able to, all because of the name of Christ. And again, let me just say, the time's coming when people will lose their jobs because they're Christians. You might have a trade, but nobody wants to do business with you because you've got that stupid cross or that stupid fish on your business card or your... we've been putting that stuff on our business cards and signs and stuff for a long, long time because it's brought us business. But the day's coming, in fact, it's already here, where it's keeping people from getting business because nobody wants to deal with a Christian. It's going to get worse.
A lot of the Christian churches are becoming very liberal also.
Yes, of course.
So we need to accommodate
Yeah, that's right.
the world.
That's exactly right. So he says, I know your poverty. I get it. What does it say in James 2:5?
Listen,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Donna?
listen my dear brothers, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in the faith and to inherit the kingdom?
Yeah. So that must be what he's talking about when he says, but you're really rich. I know you're poor, I know you're poverty, but you're rich. Some translations will put an exclamation point at the end of rich in that parenthetical comment. But you're rich. I mean, really rich. Rich with an exclamation point, or the way you would type it. 5 exclamation points, and rich is in bold letters and capitalized, underlined, in color. That rich. 1 Timothy 6:18.
We are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share.
Yeah, we're rich in the faith. And if you're rich in the faith, that means that you've not only got privilege, but you got responsibilities. And that means you're to be rich in good works. Who are those good works for? We talked about this last week. Who are the good works for? God doesn't need your good works, does he?
No, other people.
Who does?
Other people.
Your neighbor. That's what Luther said. He said, God doesn't need your good works, but your neighbor does. That's what the whole second table of the 10 Commandments is about. Being of some earthly good to your neighbor. Verse 9 says that he knows the slander of those who say that they're Jews. Matthew 10:22.
And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved.
But you will, what for my name's sake?
You will be hated.
Oh, you will be hated, yes. You'll be hated. That's a promise. From the mouth of Jesus Christ. That's a promise. You'll be hated, Betty. They hated Jesus, right? Well, they're going to hate you too. John 15:18-25.
If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it will love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember the words I spoke to you. No servant is greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin. Now, however, they have no excuse for their sin. Did you say through 25?
Mm-hmm.
He who hates me, hates my Father as well. If I had not done among them what no one else did, they would not be guilty of sin. But now they have seen these miracles, and yet they have hated both me and my Father. But this is to fulfill what is written in their law. They hated me without reason.
So just in case you didn't get the little sentence out of Matthew, John's giving you the whole spiel here. This is why the world hates you. Because you preach the gospel. You live the gospel. And the world hates that. Because it's the opposite of what the world wants. The world doesn't want the gospel. So I put a Greek word down there at the bottom. If you want to write next to it, we'll transliterate. That first letter, the beta, looks like a what?
B.
Yeah, so that's what you put down, B. The next letter is a lambda. And you can kind of imagine how that ends up eventually being a capital L. So L. The next one is an alpha, or you might say alpha. And you can tell right away looking at it what that letter is, right? The next one you can't really tell though, can you? That's an S. That's a sigma. And it's if it's not at the end of a word, it looks like that. At the end of a word, it will look more like our S. Even in early English, like colonial English, we had short and long S's. If you ever go to the post office and printing house at Colonial Williamsburg and look at some of their prints that they have in there for sale, you'll see right away short S's and long S's. And the long S in cursive looks like a long slanted S. But in the regular type or font that's straight up and down, it looks like an F, a lowercase f, without the crossbar coming out the right-hand side. It just sticks out the left side, the back side. So it looks like an F when you look at it, but it's actually an S in older English. Well, that's that short S, not the long S. The next letter is really hard. So what have we got so far? And how would you pronounce that? Yeah, there you go. So this is the word that's used for slander there in your translations. And you can probably guess what this word's going to be already. The next letter there is how we would write PH. So go ahead and do that. But the F sound. The next letter is a long E sound that in Greek isn't E, but A. So just go ahead and write an E in there anyway. But it's pronounced like a long A in modern day English. The next one, the mu there, the second to the last, you can, if you look at it closely enough, you can see where it goes like this. Now, what letter am I making? Look at me. M. Yeah, that's the very letter right there. M. And the next one is the one that Jesus talks about when he says, not the least iota. That's an I. And then we know the A again. So this word in Greek is pronounced blasphemia. Blasphemia. Can you figure out what English word that is? Blasphemy. So when it says here in verse 9, I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you're rich, and the slander, you could translate it accurately, and the blasphemy of those who say that they're Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. We don't translate it as blasphemy because we tend to reserve that word for hatred against God, not his people. But I want to tell you that just as they hated Jesus, they will hate you. If they hate you, who are they hating? It said it in that John passage that Donna read. And not only Jesus, but his Father. If they slander you, if they blaspheme you, they are blaspheming the name of the one you are called by. So just wanted to point out that word there because I think it's important to understand that when we... why would David not kill King Saul? When he had ample opportunity and Saul was trying to kill him, anybody would say, well, it was justified. David was anointed the new king anyway. What's Saul still doing being the king? David let him keep on being the king and wouldn't raise a hand against him. Why?
God's anointed.
That's right, because Saul also was God's anointed. And you didn't do that. You let God deal with somebody like that. Well, if David felt that way about somebody that was killing him, You get the idea here of how it affects back along the way to God. When you are slandered, when you are blasphemed, God is too. Jews. Who's doing this? Who's doing this blasphemy or slander? Those who say that they're Jews. Who say that they're Jews. So you know what he means by that. But let's look at Acts 13, 42 to 50. Loudly, please. Yeah.
As they went out, the people begged that these things might be told them the next Sabbath. And after the meeting of the synagogue broke up, many Jews and without converts to Judaism followed Paul and Barnabas, who, as they spoke with them, urged them to continue in the grace of God. The next Sabbath, almost the whole city gathered to hear the word of the Lord. But when the Jews saw the crowds, they were filled with jealousy and began to contradict what was spoken by Paul, reviling him. And Paul and Barnabas spoke out boldly, saying, It was necessary that the word of God be spoken first to you. Since you thrust it aside and judge yourselves unworthy of eternal life, behold, we are turning to the Gentiles. For so the Lord has commanded us, saying, I have made you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring salvation to the ends of the earth. And when the Gentiles heard this, they began rejoicing and glorifying the word of the Lord. And as many as were appointed to eternal life believed. And the word of the Lord was spreading throughout the whole region. But the Jews incited the devout women of high standing and leading men to... I'm not making sense here. But the Jews incited the devout women of high standing and the leading men of the city, stirred up persecution against Paul and Barnabas, and drove them out of their district. But they shook off the dust from their feet.
That's fine. That's fine. So you get the idea here. These are the kind of Jews that are being talked about in this letter when Jesus says those who say that they're Jews, but are really a synagogue of Satan. Those who are stirring up hatred against preachers like Timothy in Ephesus. Those who are putting the church in Smyrna through all kinds of tribulation. Acts 14, 1 through 7 and 19 says, Now at Iconium they entered together into the Jewish synagogue and spoke in such a way that a great number of both Jews and Greeks believed. Do you think the synagogue leaders are going to be happy about this? You think the Pharisees are going to be delighted that... But the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brothers. So they remained for a long time, speaking boldly for the Lord, who bore witness to the word of his grace, granting signs and wonders to be done by their hands. But the people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jews and some with the apostles. When an attempt was made by both Gentiles and Jews with their rulers to mistreat them and to stone them, they learned of it and fled to Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and to the surrounding country. And there they continued to preach the gospel. And then in verse 19, But Jews came from Antioch and Iconium, and having persuaded the crowds, they stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city, supposing that he was dead. Looks dead. Synagogue of Satan. I mean, it's just pure evil that does something like that, right? Pure evil. They're of the synagogue of Satan, it says in verse 9. Well, let's look at 2 Peter 2:1. You thought it was going to be Matthew 7, didn't you? 2 Peter 2:1. We might come back to Matthew.
But the false prophets also arose among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you who will secretly point to destructions, heresies, even denying the master who bought them and bringing upon themselves with swift destruction.
Yeah. So This is what they were doing in these gatherings. That's what synagogue means, to gather together, to assemble together. They were using these as gathering places to determine the destruction of Christian people. Synagogue, not of the Lord, but a synagogue of Satan. Verse 10 says, suffer. It is God's will that we suffer. This is hard for us to appreciate. How many of you like suffering? Yeah. There are some people who do, you know. Now, I think that you like suffering more than you think. I think you like suffering more than you give yourselves credit for. Let me give you an example. Well, you know, I had to go to the doctor the other day because I've got this condition, and I've had to take 3 new medications for this condition, and the doctor wants me to come back in 3 months, and they're going to do this scan and this test and the other thing, and we just trumpet this to anybody who will listen. But certainly I'm not talking about any of us. I would never do such a thing. Larry Clark would never do such a thing. None of you have ever done such a thing. We all do such a thing, don't we? There's a certain part of our suffering that we actually sort of kind of enjoy. Because we like, oh, you're shaking your head no, but I'm telling you, you enjoy telling people about your suffering. So on some level, you're enjoying your suffering. We're just that sick. I mean, here.
Sympathy.
Yeah, we do. We want sympathy, but it might go a little bit beyond that. But there are other people who actually take great delight in pain and suffering. I hope there's none of those here. But I have watched kids that we are charged with on Monday afternoons to look after for a few hours, who will turn around and run into a wall. Boom! Ow! And then turn around and do it again. Why? Well, part of it's attention. No question about it. But part of it's got to be. Woo-hoo.
It feels so good when you stop. That's an old.
Oh, it feels so good when you stop, when the pain stops? Okay. It is God's will that His people suffer. But I'm not talking cancer, heart disease, what have you. It's just different kind of suffering. Let's read about it. Acts 14:22. I know it's in your Bible somewhere.
Strengthening the souls of the disciples, encouraging them to continue in the faith, and saying that through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom of God.
There you go. Again, continue in the faith. Keep the faith till the end. But between now and the end, we are meant to go through many tribulations. It's how we enter the kingdom of God. So, when tribulations come, when trials come, make it one of your first priorities to thank God. Now, this sounds strange. It sounds alien to the kind of life that we want to live. But it's the kind of life that the church has always lived in all parts of the world, in all times, in all denominations. And it's the kind of life that God expects us to live. We will enter eternal life. We will enter the kingdom through much tribulation.
So we become stronger that way.
Yeah, there's certainly that part, that we become stronger in the faith. Tribulation, trials, troubles will either drive you closer to God or drive you away.
Isn't that how we raise our children, to let them, we don't do everything for them because we want them to learn.
Exactly.
And learn to be stronger and learn to figure things out on
Yeah.
their own.
Just humorous story to set this up. I was asked a question yesterday at the blood drive that I've never been asked before in my life. I was just telling Donna about this, and 3 of the people at that table know about it. I think I told Pam, maybe not. But they couldn't get my blood pressure taken yesterday. And finally, it took, and in the taking, they found out that my blood pressure was fine, but that my heart rate was only 49 beats per minute. And that's why the cuff wasn't, because it thought I was dead. So, I told you it was a humorous setup. So, the lady that was trying to get my blood pressure taken, she asked me a question that nobody, I mean no one, ever in the history of Mark has ever asked. She said, "Do you exercise regularly?" As though that were the reason for the low pulse rate. I said that was going to set something up, and I meant for it to. I do exercise regularly, as it turns out. I've been digging a lot of holes over at the parsonage. I've been lifting a lot of heavy field stones, putting decorative edging around the whole parsonage. I walk 3 to 5 miles or more almost every day. Sometimes that's while I'm carrying field stone in my arms. And it makes you hurt. There's a muscle that goes right through here. I didn't know that. Did you know that there's a muscle that goes right through here on your hand? I was never, in my whole life, I've never been aware of that particular muscle. It just ached from carrying field stone back and forth from the skid around to the front of the house and putting it and holding it like that. That muscle got so cramped that when I opened my hand, it cracked like a knuckle. That's how you get stronger. Right? You got to tear down muscle to build up muscle. That's the way the world works. That's the way life works. New life comes into this world through much pain and tribulation. And if you don't believe that's true, ask a mama. That's the way that life works in this world. I grew up at the leading edge of a paddle. Pow! Learn anything, boy? Pow! I grew up at the leading edge of a hard follow-through. My dad was not aiming at my backside. He was aiming 3 feet out the other side of me. That's the way you grow, through tribulation. Now, we could name lots of examples of that. People don't seem to grow by having an easy life. The news is full of them. Right? Verse 10 says, in fact, not only are you going to suffer, but you're going to be tested. Now, this word is meant to be understood in the terms of how we get precious metals out of rocks. Sunday night, George Barringer was looking at the stone trim work we've been putting around the parsonage. He was looking at it out back. He said, "Where'd you get your quartz rock?" I got this big quartz rock that I lifted off the side of the trail going down back towards the tower a couple of years ago. Drove my truck back in there after I'd seen it walking, and I just picked it up, put it down in the back of the truck, and drove it back over here and put it at the front corner. But then I picked it up and put it in a wheelbarrow and wheeled it around to the backside as a decorative element. Just drive around the parsonage, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it's beautiful white quartz rock back there. George goes, "Bet you there's gold in there." And I said, "What?" He said, "Oh yeah." He said, there's a lot of gold around these parts. I mean, that's what Gold Hill's all about, all the gold and the quartz rock and all that. Then George proceeds to give me a history of gold in these here parts.
Right.
If you've ever had George talk to you about anything in the world, you know you're going to get a recitation. So he said, "You know, if you break that open, I bet you find gold." I said, "It's more valuable to me sitting there the way it is. But you've got to cause distress to that rock just to find out if there's any gold in it. Then you got to smelt it down. You got to try it. You got to test it. You got to get rid of all the impurities." Which led George to a talk about how there's also mercury in every creek in North Carolina in these parts, because mercury used to stick to the gold. Gold attracts mercury. And the old prospectors, they used to roll up in the creeks. They'd roll up the mercury into little balls and send them floating down the streams. They'd sluice it off the gold that they would find. Did you know that? Don't drink the water in the creeks around here, is the lesson from that. How many kids grew up in this area drinking out of a creek? Good information to have, I told George. Don't drink from the creeks, as we used to call them in Ohio, the creeks. Tested. That's what it means. You're going to be tested. Job was tested. We're not going to read it. I'm just going to tell you the story. Both of them the same thing. There was an angelic gathering, a retreat for angels. We still have those today. They invite me. That was a side joke. So at this angelic conference, the Lord noticed that Satan was there. Isn't that interesting? That Satan can go up to heaven and hang out with God and the other angels, and he's no threat. Doesn't concern God in the least. How come he concerns us so much? See what I mean? So at this gathering of the angels, God says, "What you been up to?" Like he doesn't know. "What's going on? What do you got planned for today?" And Satan tells him, "I've been wandering about the earth," and so forth. And God says, "Well, why have you been doing that?" He said, "Did you notice my fellow Job? Oh, what a great guy he is, huh? Well, he wouldn't be so great if you wouldn't protect him, blah, 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 blah. And if you just give me permission to test him, we'll see how long he praises your name." God says, "You can do whatever you want to him. Just don't take his life." Isn't it nice to know that the devil has to ask to tempt you? It's worth considering, isn't it? The devil has to ask God for permission to test you. It may not be so nice for you to hear that God says, "Okie doke. Just don't go this far." And after really putting him through the test in chapter 2, he comes back because Job's still praising God after horrible things happen in his life and to his family. And God says the same thing. "Have you noticed my good servant Job?" Knowing full well what Satan's been up to in Job's life. And he said, "Well, yeah, that's because you won't let me afflict him." God says, "You can afflict him as much as you want. Just don't take his life." That's when the sores and the boils become so bad that he scrapes them off with broken pottery. I mean, it's got to be pretty awful for you to want to do something like that, to be rid of it. Testing. Testing like Job was tested. But for how long? 10 days. That's what it says right there. You're going to be tested for 10 days. Now, there's a couple things on my calendar this summer that I'm looking forward to. And you might say, I'm counting down the days. I'm not looking forward to tribulation, but if I knew I had to go through it, I'd be sure to mark it out on my calendar. It's going to be over with after this 10th day. But does it mean 10 days? Does 7 mean 7? Does 12 mean 12? Does 3 mean 3? These numbers have significance. So here's what 10 means. It means complete. It's all going to be accomplished in that span of 10. And it's measurable, but brief. Now, the Bible also talks about 1,000 years. Revelation also talks about 1,000 years. That also is specific and measurable, but it's a long time. 10 days isn't. Okay? It's brief. It's going to be over soon. You can endure. It's only going to last a week and a half. You follow? Okay. You too will be tested. That's a guarantee. But it will be brief. It may last longer than 10 of our days, but it will be brief. Not going to last forever. Hang in there is the idea. We're to be faithful unto death. I'm just kind of summarizing the rest of it. We're not even going to look up these verses. You can do it on your own. Through this tribulation, we're to be faithful unto death. And if we are faithful unto death, we'll receive the crown of life. Now, when we think of crowns, what do we think of? We think of some big gold thing with maybe some jewels all around. That's not the crowns that they wore back then. There were two different kinds. In fact, one was more like a laurel leaf. That's a crown. And another one is a thin gold band that kings and emperors wore. Thin. In fact, you could put more, and they did. They would put on multiple bands because I'm the king of that country and the king of that country and the king. And so they'd wear all these at once. But this meant that not just that you were the king, but that you whooped them. You were the conqueror. You were the victor. You came out on top. That's what this really signified. You're not just the king, but the conqueror. This is the crown that you get to wear if you're faithful until death. You get to wear the conqueror's crown and reign with Christ at the right hand of God is the promise of Scripture. You read these and you'll hear. So, if you got an ear, listen to what the Spirit says to the church. And if you do, if you overcome, what's the promise? You'll get what? It's a negative promise in this one. It's in verse 11. What does it say? You won't be hurt by something. The second death. What's the second death? Yeah. It's eternal death. It's eternal destruction. It's the hell of fire and brimstone that never is extinguished. It's eternal death, from which you can never escape. It is the death that you will live, the death that you will experience for eternity. You will not be hurt by that if you listen to the Spirit, keep the faith to the end, and overcome.